Welcome back to Mind Before Coffee. The podcast is not a podcast where I basically just stick my microphone on and talk about not any subject. I do have rules, but it's not scripted. It's real, it's raw. I'm literally in my car on my way to work, and we just kind of see what comes out of my brain before a cup of coffee, which is usually a hit or miss. It's either really great or it's horrendous. So I apologize in advance. So today I wanted to jump in on the topic of PCOS after pregnancy. And I was thinking about this topic the other night, and it just popped in my head, right? I don't know if you guys have that, right? You just have thoughts just pop in your head, right? They can be quite I don't want to say aggressive, but I don't know. Not unwanted, but they just come to you. Okay. And I had this thought. I was like, okay, PCOS, hormone issue, pregnancy deals with a lot of hormones, massive changes in the hormones. How would that affect PCOS? So it got me thinking. So naturally, I went and pulled up a few points and kind of had a look at it to see, what the situation was. What is the whole, oh, guys, did we just have a full moon? Did I miss the full moon? That is very unlike me. Full moon in what? Virgo season's coming up, so I don't think it was it Leo? Full moon in Leo? It was a new moon in Leo recently. Okay, cool. Might explain some of the wild energy we've been experiencing. I don't know. I know that the new moon in Leo recently was quite wild. So many people were coming to me and they were like, what's happening? Like something shifting. I'm like, just blame the moon. That's the easiest thing. Just blame the moon. It was the moon, guys. So I'm definitely going to be checking in on that. Just doing a quick little, either it's coming up or it's just past. No, it must be the 9th. What's today? Gosh, guys, it's a Monday morning and I have no idea where we're at. I have no idea where we're at. So that's fun. That's exciting. Okay, cool. So let me pull up my talking notes because I did get some talking notes for this one because it's quite in-depth. So first, I wanted to touch on very quickly, very briefly, my birth story, my son's birth story, our experience with, pregnancy delivery. It was not an easy one. So to preface this, to give you guys a kind of intro, number one, I did an incredible amount of healing before I fell pregnant. Okay. So I was struggling with a thyroid issue. I had an overactive thyroid, almost overactive thyroid, so subclinical. So that meant that a doctor wasn't going to diagnose me, but a doctor was also not going to do anything about it. Okay. At least my experience. There are other doctors out there that are phenomenal and that will help you even if you're on your way to being sick. Okay. So I had struggling with overactive thyroid, low iron, and quite severe PCOS symptoms. Doctors kind of, brushed me off, or the doctor that I went to go see kind of brushed me off. Another doctor told me I don't have PCOS if I fall pregnant. So it was, in essence, not a very pleasant experience. That being said, the year prior to me falling pregnant, I did an immense amount of healing purely because I wanted to relieve myself of my PCOS symptoms, but I also wanted to give myself the best chance of falling pregnant because at that stage, I didn't know how severe my PCOS was. I know that my mother fell pregnant relatively easily with me, so I was of the understanding that I shouldn't have too much trouble. But I had no idea. The doctors wouldn't refuse to do the scans and whatnot. So I was in a very, I would say, isolated position when it came to this. So I took matters into my own hands, and I did an incredible amount of healing before I fell pregnant. So I was on my hormone balancing protocol. I was very, very strict with basically what I was eating and what I wasn't eating. So that led me to when my husband and I decided that we wanted to fall pregnant. It wasn't too much of a train smash. So we fell pregnant on our second cycle. I'm talking about this so clinically. I was very serious about falling pregnant. So usually I've got ADHD, so it's either all or nothing. So it's either I don't fall pregnant or I'm doing everything possible to fall pregnant in the shortest amount of time. That's just how my brain works. So I was doing everything, did the prepping. When we were trying to fall pregnant, I was doing the ovulation test sticks. I was doing all this stuff. Also, I had no idea where I was physically, like health-wise. I didn't know if this was going to be a difficult journey or an easy journey. For some women with PCOS, falling pregnant is an incredibly difficult journey. Incredibly difficult. So I didn't know where I stood because I didn't have the support from my healthcare professionals to guide me into where I was. It was kind of like, well, off you go. If you fall pregnant, awesome. If you do, you don't have PCOS, and if you don't, well, then come back, sort of situation. So that was incredibly challenging for me to have to deal with. One, I was very much in the dark and very much just trusting in everything that I was doing for myself, the advocating I did for myself, the choices, the decisions I made for my health, that I had to fully trust myself in the whole process. And we managed to fall pregnant. I had a relatively easy pregnancy and I did not enjoy it, just to preface that. I'm sure that there are moms out there. I know that there are women out there who love being pregnant. I was not one of those. I hated pregnancy. It was not joyous for me at all. I was very excited to have a child, but the whole process, it's not fun. I didn't really enjoy pregnancy, and delivery was quite traumatic. So we had quite a traumatic delivery. My son decided he wanted to come a little bit earlier, so we were aiming for a natural delivery. So we obviously were waiting to go into labor, and just before 39 weeks I went into labor, early labor. It was a very slow labor. I went to the hospital, they sent me home, went back again. That's when they decided to keep me, even though I wasn't more than 4 centimeters dilated. So then they kept me. The hospital was quite quiet, so that wasn't too much of a problem. And then it took me some time to continue to dilate. As you can expect with modern medicine hospitals, they get very nervous when things aren't moving fast enough. So we did end up doing an induction, which, to be quite, in my personal opinion, like, if you ever have the option to do the induction, skip the induction, just go straight to the C-section. Like, it was awful. But again, like I said, I had a very traumatic experience. I did no pain medication. So I only had gas when I did the induction. Basically, what had happened was I had slowed down with my dilation, and my son was incredibly eager to arrive. So him coming out and me not opening up quick enough ended up in him and I having a little bit of a disagreement, we could so say. he was like, Mom, I want to come out. I want to see the world. I'm so excited. I'm like, can you just give me a minute to breathe and open for you? Which led to a bit of a tricky situation. I'd stopped dilating. The induction helped me nothing. I was on an induction. I was on pectin for I think about an hour, and I did not dilate a single bit. And that is when the doctor was like, listen, I think we need to call it. We need to go for a C-section. I had already priorly discussed with my doctor. I would love to do natural, but the moment you put your foot down and you're calling it, I will not argue with you. You know, more than me. So she was wonderful. My doctor was absolutely wonderful. She called it. She said, listen, we need to go in for the C-section. And we went in. At that point, I was a feral cat who was trying to give birth in an alleyway. That is the only way I could explain it. I feral, absolutely feral. At that point, I was moving into shock. I was incredibly panicky. I was in a lot of pain, which in my mind, I just thought was normal labor. It wasn't normal labor. I had a very unique situation when we managed to get in and do the C-section. My doctor was literally hands in me, pulling my son out. She goes, oh, well, trying to pull my son out. She goes, oh, no wonder you're in so much pain. I'm like, okay. Could you please explain to me what the hell is going on? She pulled my son out. We're all very happy, all excited. I am in an absolute daze. My husband very much just kind of took over from there. I was in a complete haze at that point. And I asked her, I said, why was I in so much pain? What happened? And she explained to me that because my son was very eager to see the world and he was already coming out, despite the fact that my cervix was not wide enough, I'd only reached 6 centimeters. His head got stuck on my cervix. So he was trying to come out of a canal that wasn't wide enough, and he got stuck in the cervix, so that he kept on coming out onto my cervix, which led to the immense amount of pain that I was going through. And basically, thank goodness my doctor called the C-section when she called the C-section, because his head was already edemaing. My cervix had already started to edema. So we couldn't really leave it much longer. We also couldn't, hold out for the in case. So I had a very rare experience in that sense. So for those of you who want to go natural, this is not to say that this, happens often. I fully peg it down to me knowing that I am a Capricorn Taurus, and like afterwards, right? Knowing that I'm a Capricorn Taurus, my son being born, me having a look at his chart, my son's a Aries, Sagittarius, Pisces, Aries rising. So what do you think happens when an Aries rising and a Capricorn rising has a discussion? Right? It was like the perfect representation, right, of what happened. So that was a quick breakdown of my birth story. To preface, in regards to PCOS, I never was flagged for gestational diabetes during my pregnancy. I did, however, pick up an incredible amount of weight. So I picked up 30 kilograms when I was pregnant, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 10 kilograms over the max. So usually you're looking at picking up about 12 to 20, if I'm not mistaken. I picked up 30, which was quite a bit. My doctor at one point did tell me, she was like, you need to slow down on your eating. He's getting too big. So at one point in my third trimester, he did measure quite big, and which obviously then placed concerns for me having a natural delivery, that he was too big. Or he would, if I carried on that way, he would be too big. We would have to do a C-section. And her knowing that I wanted to go natural, she advised to chill out on the eating a little bit so that we could bring him back to the normal expected weight. So that was kind of the only major thing that I could note that I could preface before going into kind of the PCOS side of things. So now we jump into the PCOS side of things. Okay, so we initially get, let me have a look here. Where are my talking points? Here, I think this is my talking points. Okay, so during pregnancy, how PCOS symptoms may manifest. So this is may manifest, not everyone with PCOS will experience this. I definitely only experienced some for when I went over these. So the first symptom is heightened anxiety and depression, which was quite interesting for me. So women with PCOS are more likely to experience prenatal anxiety and depression compared to those without the condition. So there are some studies on this that I can always reference in the description. Hopefully I remember to do that. Now, I didn't feel anxious or depressed. If anything, I felt less anxious. And it was a super chill pregnancy for me. I really my anxiety really diminished during pregnancy. It came back in full force post. So during the pregnancy, I was very chill, very relaxed. It was great. For me, it was great. And I could potentially peg that to the increase in progesterone. But obviously I don't have any blood work. I don't have any stats. I'm very excited for my second pregnancy because I'm going to approach this with such a clinical mindset. Let me also just turn that indicator off for you guys. I'm sure that's driving you guys absolutely insane. Okay, next up is increased pregnancy complications. So there are some risk for pregnancy with those with PCOS. Which is obviously not exciting. And this is just possibility, right? Not to say that you will have any of these or get any of these. So even accounting for age and BMI, women with PCOS face significantly higher risks of miscarriage, gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, labor induction, and cesarean delivery. So obviously I ended up in a situation where I had to do the emergency C-section, which would it be related to PCOS? I don't think so. Can go. Like, I can't go. Sorry, guys, but there are people that are wanting me to go, but they want me to drive literally through oncoming traffic. So it's a bit crazy. This is the exact representation of what I expected mine before coffee to look like. Absolute chaos because I'm driving through peak traffic on a Monday morning. Okay, so obviously, again, not to say that you guys, if you've got PCOS and you're pregnant, that you would experience this, but it is a good idea to be aware that there is an increased risk if you do have PCOS for these certain things, okay? So there are studies, again, that reinforce these findings, including elevated risk for preterm birth and similar complications. So it's good just to be aware of those things and obviously have a chat with your doctor. Find a good doctor that will listen to you, because not all of them listen. Like I said, I don't think that my PCOS was a driving force for my emergency C-section. I purely just think that was just my body and my son just not working together. Excuse me. And I was never flagged. I did blood tests urine tests every month. I wasn't flagged for any other issue. Everything was quite fine. There was never anything that was flagged or brought up to my attention. I never saw all of my results. So I could have been on the brink of something and nobody would have said anything, because that's usually how it works. In Western medicine, you'll only be told if you are out of range on any tests. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, guys. Okay, I'm not editing that out. I'm not going to go through this to edit it out. Okay, so after pregnancy, postpartum PCOS symptoms and health risks. So postpartum cardiometabolic health. So women with PCOS are at greater risk of postpartum cardiovascular and psychiatric complications relative to women without PCOS. Even after adjusting for co-founders, retrospective claims data also link PCOS to higher rates of postpartum preeclampsia, eclampsia, and cardiomyopathy. Those were a lot of big words. So let me break it down. There are obviously heart complications. And then I think they mentioned there preeclampsia and eclampsia as well. So again, something to be mindful of. After pregnancy, because they did mention there for psychiatric complications, I'm assuming that they are talking about anxiety and depression postpartum, and that women with PCOS have a higher risk. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because I struggled with postpartum depression horrifically. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I honestly don't know how much I could say on the topic, and needing to put warnings or whatever the case is on something like this, because, or let me just preface it that it was severe postpartum depression. I was never admitted, mainly because I'm a stubborn, incredibly stubborn, and I will refuse to accept help in most cases. I have a phenomenal husband who noted these things, put his foot down, and made a plan to ease the depressive symptoms that I was experiencing. So it was quite a severe postpartum depression. I had postpartum anxiety that had elevated back postpartum, but it was manageable. And it was in really kind of severe in those first 3 months, which, if I'm not mistaken, is quite normal. The postpartum depression didn't really arrive until a little bit later. I would say 5-6 months. It peaked at 7-8 months. That was when it was considerably awful. And I had mentioned to my husband that I don't feel good, I don't feel happy, and that kind of this is what's going through my head. And that was when he put his foot down and he was like, we're putting our son into nursery. I argued because I didn't want him to go to nursery until he was a year old. And he, like I said, put his foot down. He was like, nope, that's not happening. He's going to nursery. My husband did negotiate with me, and he was happy for him to go. My husband wanted our son to go 5 days a week. I was not happy with that. So we compromised. We started my son on 3 days a week at the nursery. Guys, I'm not kidding you. Within a week, I had no more depressive symptoms. It was incredible. So I am incredibly grateful for my husband. He is an absolute gem, and he really knows, like me, inside and out on how to run things. So I'm really, really appreciative of that. Listen, I'm going to be popping out the car. I'm coming back. We're going to finish this podcast, hopefully within the next 20 minutes or less. Okay, cool. We are back. Okay, I'm just going to jump on to the next one. Postpartum mood disturbances. A population-based cohort found a significant association between PCOS, postpartum depressed mood, including anhedonia. Notably, prenatal anxiety and depression partly mitigated this risk. And then the last one was symptom recurrence timeline. Although comprehensive clinical data is limited, one recent online source from July 2025 suggests PCOS symptoms, especially metabolic features like weight gain, menstrual irregularities, can return as early as weeks postpartum, particularly as breastfeeding diminishes. Those with more severe pre-pregnancy symptoms may experience a stronger and earlier return of symptoms. So I wanted to get both of those points out before I start driving, that I'm not reading from my phone whilst I'm driving, because that is irresponsible. Okay, so again, that was literally just touching on the mood disturbances and then how quickly symptoms returned. So I'll quickly touch on my experience with that. As I mentioned before, I did struggle considerably with postpartum depression. By the time I hit, I would say 10 months to a year, all the postpartum depression was completely gone. At that point, I had, obviously my husband assisted with getting our son into nursery a little bit earlier than I wanted, but it was an absolutely phenomenal decision. It really helped my postpartum depression. It just gave me relief and space to, one, breathe, to deal with what's going on in my head without having the responsibility of being on 24/7. I got like, a 6 hours of space where I didn't have to worry about feeding or cleaning or, and at that time, to preface this as well, I'd gone back to co-running our studio at 3 months postpartum. So I was teaching about 22 clients a week. I would take my son with me to the studio. I had somebody looking after him at the studio with me in my classes, which sounds phenomenal. It's not. Like, I'm in the middle of teaching a class and all I can think about is he okay? Is he fine? Does he need a nappy change? Right? So I was teaching about 20 classes, private clients a week. And on top of that, managing the studio, which ended up being a full-time position. So I was going back to work, managing my, business owner responsibilities with my baby with no care. I had the only assistance I had was during my teaching hours. So I was working, admin wise it was just me and my son, and I'm just doing whatever I can in the little bit of space and a little bit of time that I have. And that definitely started taking a toll on me, was wearing multiple hats at the same time and having the time where he went to nursery and I had that space where I could focus 100% on what I absolutely love to do, really, really helped pull me out of that space of feeling very low. And I'm definitely not a kind of stay-at-home housewife type of woman at all. I'm a Capricorn rising. Like, all I ever want to do is run a multi-million-dollar company. Right? So to preface that, I love what I do. I'm absolutely incredibly passionate about what I do. And I also love building and creating profitable spaces that serves both the customer and the business owner, right? So I need to be rewarded for the hard work. I want to see that good return. I want to make good money. But I also am incredibly passionate about building a beautiful space for clients to enjoy, to feel safe, to receive a good service, etc., etc. So, like, absolutely love that, right? I love being a mom. I'm thrilled that I get to be a mom. But I'm definitely a want my cake and eat it space, where I want to be able to enjoy my kids, have them close, do all the fun things, see them grow, see them, explore the world. But I also want to run a business. So that's probably my toxic trait, let's be honest. I want both. But I'm definitely not built or cut out to be a stay-at-home mom. It would drive me crazy. I had a bit of a taste of that. I could not. It would drive me crazy. And that's, obviously prefacing, it's no disrespect to women who do want that. Some women thrive in that situation and want to step into their true femininity and experience a complete 100% stay at home mom. They want to do the baking, they want to be with the kids, they want to do all of that. They don't want to have to stress about anything else. And that is phenomenal. I take my hat off to those women because it is incredibly challenging to be a stay-at-home mom. It's a full-time job with no rest, no vacation, no bonus, nothing. It is just, it just is what it is. And I think that, with stepping out and having our son go to nursery, really, really helped diminish a lot of those symptoms. It allowed me to gain back some time to continue to explore myself, to continue to grow what I'm passionate about, which I believe is what truly assisted in alleviating those depressive symptoms. Allowing you as a woman postpartum to not lose yourself completely, because you can lose yourself to motherhood. I'm speaking as a millennial, and I look at our parents' generation, and oftentimes you see women who, like our mothers, completely lose themselves when the kids leave the home, because now what? Because they poured everything into being the perfect mother and having the perfect kids. Then the kids leave, and then you go, okay, well, what now? So you see a lot of that, like losing yourself to motherhood. And in my case, I was quite passionate about not having that happen, and to have something to keep a little part of who I was before being a mom, being able to embrace being a mother, but also being able to hold on to the Kayla pre-pregnancy, right? Let me quickly jump on here. Then PCOS symptoms returning postpartum, and how this online source was explaining that PCOS symptoms were often returning, weeks after delivery. And in some cases, if PCOS was quite severe before pregnancy, the symptoms came back, stronger, and earlier return of symptoms is what it says there. Now, that's exactly why I prefaced the fact that I did an incredible amount of healing before I fell pregnant. So my PCOS symptoms didn't really return incredibly quickly, but they did return quicker than what I expected, and they have returned more aggressively. I said to my husband about a month ago, I said to him, I honestly feel like my PCOS symptoms are worse than what they were before I started healing, which not fun. Not fun to have that, okay? So my hirsutism came back a lot more aggressively. I had gotten to the point where excess hair growth, I would say, probably reduced about 70%. Again, that's literally, guys, that's just my experience. This is not, I did not study myself or do any kind of quantitative research or qualitative or whatever the case may be. So the excess hair growth had reduced considerably during my healing. It is worse than what it was before I fell pregnant now, I feel, which is not fun at all. Pain during my cycle has worsened quite considerably than before I started healing. And what other symptoms do I feel was worse? My mood. that was the other one. My mood is also a little rusty, I would say, and very much with my cycle. So my luteal phase, I'm a lot more on edge, a lot more irritable, a lot more snappy, a lot more short. And I mean, could we peg that down to also being in a situation where I've got a lot more responsibility, I've got a lot more stress on my plate? Probably we could. Could it be, entirely PCOS related? Probably not. But it's definitely something that I've picked up, and I know that in some sense that there is that relation there. So quickly to go over, like, how does hormone fluctuations of pregnancy affect women with PCOS? Because this is really what fascinated me. This was really what got me interested in looking into and doing this deep dive. So hormonal changes in pregnancy and the impact on PCOS. So first of all, we get an increased progesterone. So in essence, that's kind of like a temporary win for women with PCOS, because usually women with PCOS suffer from low progesterone in comparison to their estrogen. So it can be considerably low, and with the increase of progesterone because of pregnancy, your body kind of shoots up the progesterone. It's kind of a bit of a win. So pregnancy leads to the higher levels of progesterone, especially after the placenta takes over hormone production. Then we really start seeing some changes. The PCOS effect, in essence, gives you the kind of the extra progesterone, regulates mood and reduces anxiety, which I definitely saw. Hands down, like I said earlier, I did not feel anxious at all. I literally was preaching, my son healed me because I did not have any sort of anxiety. I'm not a meds type of person, so I like to do everything holistically and naturally as possible, and I use modern medicine as a last resort or as an intervention when required. So I don't take medication for depression or anxiety at all. I'm just manage it as I manage it. And this was incredible. That's why I was like, my son healed me, because I felt really not anxious at all. It suppresses excess androgens, which that is where we can have a look, kind of like see the concept of the reduction in excess hair growth, which again, I had reduced that with healing already. And I would say that it almost completely disappeared with pregnancy. Then improved skin clarity. That's what progesterone does. That's for some women, their skin breaks out like crazy. Everyone was telling me I was glowing. Everyone was saying how amazing I looked. I looked in the mirror and I was like, I don't know what you see. So I really can't talk about that. And then the extra progesterone also reduces insulin resistance slightly in the first trimester, which is great for women with PCOS. Women with PCOS, that there are different types of PCOS, and women with an insulin-based PCOS, this would kind of be a win for them. Then we also get estrogen that rises as well, and this kind of gives a bit of a mixed bag scenario when it comes to women with PCOS. So basically, estrogen levels rise steadily throughout pregnancy. Estrogen is the pretty hormone. It's the one that makes you feel good and flirty and sexy and all that kind of great stuff. Rises with pregnancy, which obviously estrogen, all the hormones play a specific role. That's why they rise. They play a specific role for pregnancy. So PCOS, the effect, right? So how does the rising of estrogen affect PCOS when pregnant? So it promotes hair growth and skin glow, which is great, awesome, wonderful. Again, like I said, I did see the hair growth. I did not see the skin glow. Everyone else saw the skin glow. So I guess you're just going to have to trust everyone else on this one. Okay. Then the rise in estrogen may also worsen estrogen dominant symptoms like tender breasts, mood swings, or fatigue, especially if liver detox is sluggish or there's congruent insulin resistance. Now, tender breasts, yes, I experienced that. I actually knew I was pregnant within days of conception because of the sore, tender breasts. And that was quite odd for me to have it so early on in my cycle. And that's what got my brain ticking. And I said to my husband, I think I might be pregnant, but let's wait and see until we do the test because we want to know for sure. I couldn't do a test there. It's too early. So I did have tender breasts. And then throughout pregnancy, it was kind of on and off. It did kind of level out, I would say, by like halfway through. Then mood swings, I didn't feel like I struggled with mood swings as much as I do now. I struggle with it a lot more now, but I do see how my progesterone has dropped considerably versus my estrogen has risen incredibly. Like this, I've got too much estrogen right now and too little progesterone, and I would say worse than before I fell pregnant. And then fatigue was atrocious. I had incredible fatigue. Now, fatigue is a difficult one because fatigue is a pregnancy symptom. And a lot of women are tired and do have horrible fatigue during pregnancy and it not being related to PCOS at all. So this is a difficult one. I was incredibly fatigued and I did have multiple naps during the day, which I thought was normal. Could this be related to my PCOS? Definitely, it could be. Could it not be related to my PCOS? Also, because, yeah, like I said, that's a difficult symptom because it is also a pregnancy symptom. Okay, then the suppression of LH and FSH, which this is basically what makes you ovulate. So the suppression of these hormones make you not ovulate during pregnancy. Obviously, you shouldn't be ovulating anyway during pregnancy. It can still happen. There are those rare cases, but your body suppresses this. Now that you're pregnant, we don't need to ovulate anymore. So the brain basically suppresses LH and FSH. So luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone during pregnancy. So they get paused, right? How does this affect PCOS? Since many women with PCOS already have high LH, this suppression may temporarily balance out their hormone profile and reduce symptoms like cystic acne, hair loss, irregular ovulation. Now, this was really interesting for me because now I suffered from horrific cystic acne, and it was the one of the big reasons why I pushed to start healing was the cystic acne. I didn't struggle too much with hair loss, although my hair over the years since I would say when my health issues started, which was 7 years ago, okay, trauma-induced, I believe. You just start seeing everything starts going wrong and you just start noticing all these things that are like horrific. And over the span of, I would say, 4 to 5 years, I lost a lot of hair. I did also bleach my hair a lot. So could this be a PCOS related thing? Possibly. Could it be just bleach related? Also possible. So I have lost an incredible amount of hair over the years. It has thinned out considerably. I would say half, but I had incredibly thick hair. So my hair still looks thick at this point. Okay. Irregular ovulation. I used to feel ovulation pain and it used to be relatively regular, but before I started healing, I wasn't really into cycle syncing like I am now. So I wouldn't be able to give, quantitative research on that. But the cystic acne was quite severe and quite prominent, very cyclical. I recall it coming in waves. And the reason why I mention this so deeply is because I did a lot of healing before I fell pregnant. So much so that I did not have any cystic acne. Like, it had gone completely. Did not have cystic acne at all. At all. I did not experience it anymore. So by the time I fell pregnant, cystic acne was a distant memory for me. And so the concept of having those hormones reduce to reduce cystic acne, I don't know. We did do uh, hormone testing before I fell pregnant, and my estrogen was on the high end, but not high enough to be flagged. I never managed to get to the point to test my progesterone, but we did test my LH and my FSH, and those were normal. And at that point, like I said, I'd done a year's worth of healing, and a lot of my symptoms had diminished. So I do believe that I was in a position where that had come to a normal space, and I was just struggling with my estrogen and progesterone balance. However, I do think at that point they were in a good space for somebody with PCOS. Whereas now I look at my symptoms, my cystic acne is coming back. So that's not fun. So that's when I know, shit's getting real now for me. Then insulin resistance, which is the more common aspect of PCOS. Most women with PCOS have the insulin-based PCOS. So what happens during pregnancy? Pregnancy will naturally increase insulin resistance to support the fetal glucose supply. Okay. So how does that affect PCOS? So women who already have insulin resistance and then they fall pregnant, this may increase risk for gestational diabetes. How did I say it? Diabetes. Like I said, I was peeing in a cup every month. Nobody ever flagged me for gestational diabetes. I can maybe go and have a look at my reports and see if I can see anything, if I was maybe close. But like I said, I had done a lot of healing, and I was relatively good in my second trimester. My first trimester, I didn't eat much. Third trimester, I ate everything I shouldn't eat. So just to preface that as well. It can also exacerbate fatigue, cravings, or weight gain. Weight gain, 100%. Like I said, I picked up 10 kilograms additional over and above the top end of what you should be picking up as being pregnant. Cravings, I had cravings for a lot of different things. Is it pregnancy cravings or is it PCOS related cravings? I wouldn't know. And then obviously I did struggle with fatigue. Again, it's a difficult one to pinpoint. And then it can also lead to complications like large birth weight or early delivery. Now, large birth weight, hands down, yes. My doctor literally told me I need to slow down on the eating. Otherwise, my baby is going to be too big and they'll have to do a cesarean. Is there anything wrong with a large birth weight? I wouldn't know professionally. Like, I'm not a gynecologist, but I have heard of many babies being a large birth weight and it's being absolutely fine. And likewise with low birth weight. I do understand that there are complications surrounding those. Now, I managed to get my son back to a normal weight before delivery. Early delivery, there wasn't an early delivery. I mean, I went into early labor on Friday night, and on the Monday when he was delivered, the Monday was 39 weeks exactly. So he came a week early, which in most cases are considered quite normal. But the large birth weight was definitely there. He was a big baby. He was a big baby. He was 3.4 when he was delivered. And he was sitting at, I think, 3.2, like 6 weeks before he was delivered, something like that. Don't quote me on that. Okay, next up is androgen levels may normalize. So what happens? Some studies show that androgen, so testosterone, levels drop during pregnancy in women with PCOS. So how does this affect the PCOS? This can lead to temporary improvements in hirsutism, acne, and scalp hair thinning. Now, again, I did a year's worth of healing before I fell pregnant. So my hirsutism had reduced considerably. So I can't say how this would affect me during pregnancy. I did note that my hirsutism reduced even more during pregnancy. So maybe that was because of the reduction in testosterone. I do know that we have my sister and myself and my mother, we do have a history of high testosterone. We do have high testosterone. So we are very aware of that. I did not have acne at all during my pregnancy, but I never really struggled with acne. I always struggled with cystic acne, which is the hormonal one, the sore pimples that you get on your chin, with PCOS, which had already cleared up by the time I fell pregnant. And then the hair thinning, that would be improvements on it. Like I said, I had some like more little hairs grow, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was massively impactful for me to talk about it. Um, it's also important to note that these benefits often reverse postpartum when hormonal levels shift again. So yes, my hirsutism has come back and it's come back with a vengeance. My acne, I'm not struggling too much with acne. I have had a few pimples here and there. My cystic acne is back. And I am convinced that my hair is thinning. And I keep asking my husband, I'm like, does it look like my hair is thinning? It does look like I got a couple of patches that's thinning out. I'm also like being very mindful because currently I dye my hair dark. So I'm like a mousy blonde. Um, but I dye my hair brown, dark brown. And so my regrowth comes out a little bit lighter. So sometimes it can look a bit funny. So I just need to have a look. I just need to do a little bit more look. But I'm convinced that my hair is thinning in a couple of patches on my scalp. So yes. So there's that. So there is some research that has been done on this, which I'm thrilled because it just popped into my head. And I was like, I wonder if anyone has thought about this. So there is a 2022 study in BMC pregnancy and childbirth reported that pregnancy suppresses hyperandrogenism. That word. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. In many women with PCOS, but symptoms often return postpartum, especially with metabolic stress or breastfeeding weaning. Okay. All I can say on this is that my PCOS has returned. I feel like it's worse than what it was before I started healing. To preface this, though, I have not looked after my body postpartum. The first year of postpartum, my body has done incredibly well despite postpartum. So a lot of women talk about the postpartum fallout, where your hair falls out and, it's just you burnt out and your body is basically breaks you, right? Your teeth aren't good and your skin isn't good and all that. I didn't really suffer from any postpartum fallout until a year after my pregnancy and delivery. And I hands down put that to the fact that I did an incredible amount of healing before I fell pregnant. And my body was in a good space with the exception of my iron levels, which I'm mad at because nobody flagged that. But anyway, so I started seeing fallout a year postpartum, and it has come with an absolute vengeance. So I am now a year and a half. So December would be 2 years postpartum, and I'm a year and a half in, and this is kind of where I feel like my PCOS is at its worst, or worse than what it was before I fell pregnant. That being said, I have not been treating my body very well, so that's worth noting. And I am basically putting myself back on my hormone protocol, doing all the things that I tell my clients to do. So I'm basically rehealing, which I'm excited about because I can do a little bit more quantitative, have a more quantitative look at this. So I can do the tests, I can, track and all that kind of beautiful stuff. Then the last research-led insight, the LIPCOS study found that women with PCOS who had children showed slightly improved hormone levels like testosterone and shorter cycle lengths years later. But these improvements weren't always significant or consistent. That's very interesting. So I'd really be keen to have a look at that. So those are pretty much the talking points that I had pulled up. I just wanted to kind of give like an overview of like complications and then obviously what the hormones do, because I was adamant that my son healed me, and in some respect he did. In some respect he did, but I am experiencing an incredible fallout now and aggravated symptoms now, a year and a half postpartum. And I think that it's worth noting, and I don't think that a lot of people have spoken about this or have done an incredible solid amount of looking into it for women with PCOS who do fall pregnant. There's still very much a stigma that if you have PCOS, you can't fall pregnant. So I feel like the topic hasn't been looked into deep enough, because it's just assumed that you can't fall pregnant if you have PCOS. Well, I'm here to say that I come from a line of women with PCOS and we've all fallen pregnant. So it is possible. I think my personal experience and my personal opinion is if you have PCOS, you're going to, first of all, fall on a spectrum of PCOS. Okay. First off. Second off, I do believe with good nutrition and fitness, you can fall pregnant with PCOS quite easily. That's from looking at my experience, looking at my sister, and looking at my mother and our experiences with falling pregnant. Okay. My mother fell pregnant with me very quickly, but she was at the height of her aerobic career. She was incredibly fit, eating very well. I'm in the same line of work as she is, at the absolute height of her career. And she presents with more vicious PCOS symptoms. Back then, they didn't know what it was. So, that was a whole story that I will maybe one day interview my mom on, and she can tell her story, which I'm going to be doing, guys. I'm going to be interviewing normal people to tell normal people. That sounds so, I don't mean that in a mean way. So I'm going to basically interview, I've always wanted to interview people, and I wanted to interview people who kind of knew things, who was like at the top of their industry, who was making an impact. And then I was like, okay, that's cool. But everyone else with podcasts is doing that. So I want to interview people from day-to-day lives who are experiencing things like PCOS, who are experiencing, um, you know, mental disorders like bipolar or depression. I want them to speak on their experience and how they manage it and how they lead lives and try and, walk through this life as best as they can, because that's more relatable. So yes, anyway, um, that is my hot take. A very long podcast for you guys. It's an hour. I'm so sorry. I hope that you guys get a good amount of information from this. And if you've got any questions, drop them down below. If you have PCOS and you've fallen pregnant and you have kiddies, let us know your experience. Let us know what you saw happen over that time. Did you struggle to fall pregnant? When you fell pregnant, did you feel like your PCOS symptoms reduced? Do you feel like they came back even worse? What was your take? What was your experience? Let us know in the comments down below. And, we can talk, we can have create a bit of a discussion in the community around this topic. I think more women need to be talking about it. And I feel like we should look into it as more of a realistic topic, that, women with PCOS are falling pregnant, and how are we, I'm definitely approaching my second pregnancy differently, in the space that I need to make sure that I not only prep, but I'm going to have to be strict during pregnancy. I'm going to have to be strict postpartum, so that I don't end up having this yo-yo effect with my PCOS during, this time of my life. And also, doing I'm now 32, 33. I don't know how old I am, 32 or 33, somewhere there. So by the time, my husband and I are finished having kids, I'm going to be approaching, or perimenopause is going to be on my mind. And I'm going to have to start looking into those things by the time I get to my mid 40s. And how is PCOS and my experience with that going to? So there's a lot. So I'm approaching my second pregnancy very differently. And I feel like if we can talk about this more and look into it a little bit more, we can help other women with PCOS approach pregnancy differently to make it easier on them, because PCOS is hard as it is. And if it's anything like what I'm experiencing now, in the aspect that my PCOS is coming back worse than what it was before I was healing, that's not fun, and we don't want that. So we want to be able to create a space and find solutions to assist with this kind of thing. Anyway, let me let you guys go. Have an awesome day, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I see like there's a few people listening to the podcast. Thank you so much. They will become better one day, but for now, this is what it is. And I appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate you supporting. Drop your comments, drop a like, do all that good stuff. Go catch me on other platforms if you don't want to listen to a whole hour all the time. You can also just go to TikTok and listen to me yap for 30 seconds. That works too. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Cheers.